in February. And now we're gonna skip ahead of here. And everything's done. You've applied to college, you've written all of those essays, you've secured the documents that you need to send in, you've mailed in the transcripts. I think that's old. They don't mail transcripts anymore. And now you're wondering, well, what do I do now? I'm a senior. It feels like this process is over, and it's not quite over. And Karen Spencer is here to tell us all the things that you need to continue to think about in your senior year. Karen, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Ian. Happy, what are we on? Thursday. Thursday.
It's Thursday. It's always Thursday on the pod. And
I
I was
know.
telling everybody at the start of our show, I mean, you and I had lunch together last week.
We did.
Uh, I feel kind of like a kid, like after Christmas, where it's just like, oh my God, it's a
Not gonna,
whole another
I
year.
know, till we have to see each other. I know. Nobody
We
believed.
don't
They're
get to
like,
see
you
each other.
want to go to a work meeting? I'm like, I do. I actually like my colleagues. So I know. They're like,
It's
I don't get
fantastic.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, we're weird, but
We
we
are.
love each other. So let's talk a little bit about seniors. I think that February is such a weird time because not a lot is happening in terms of stimulation from this process, right? You're not
Yeah.
getting decisions back from schools, you're not sending anything into schools, you're just kind of waiting.
Yeah.
Um, what advice do you have for students who are feeling anxious about the waiting part and want something to do?
Yeah, parents always think like the applying part is going to be the hardest part, and I think waiting is way harder than a lot of people think. So I know that a
Yeah.
lot of people listening probably have decisions, they've already made their call, they've got an ED or EA, that's whatever, and then there's the other half that are still waiting to hear from, the schools on their list. So when I was thinking about this the other day, and I've said this before, I have a freshman in college right now, so I just went through this stage. A year ago. So half of what I was thinking about is kind of what to be doing, both as a student and a parent, but also like what's coming that you might want to be thinking about as well,
Yeah.
just to be one step ahead of it. So it's kind of a mixture of both. So, let's go with the obvious answer first, which is everybody's least favorite answer if they're a student, which is to keep up your grades. And I know the senior slide, the senior slip, senioritis, call it what you want, is a real thing.
Yeah.
And a little slip is not going to probably be the end of you. A lot of slip might be. So, parents, you don't need to tell your kids if they aren't listening that I said that. That's fine. But if you go from all A's to B pluses, is anybody going to rescind your admission? Probably not. You go from A's to D's, as I did have a student once do. Then yes, that might find yourself without any choices left. So every college or any college you enroll in is going to ask for a final transcript. That is a requirement of every college. And so just keep that in mind, and
Yeah.
that your decision, whatever you get, if you've already gotten it or you're still waiting on it, is determined and is still hinging on the fact that that transcript looks pretty similar to what they originally admitted you upon. So
Yeah.
again, a little slide, fine. A lot of slide, not so good.
Yes. Students are like, well, whatever. I can get a couple B's in these classes and I think that it's hard for us sometimes because like we've seen rare cases where offers of admission get revoked, but I have even seen, straight A students who are going to really selective schools who are put on like an academic probation for the
Yeah.
first semester because their grades slipped a little bit in their senior year. And they don't say, well, we're not going to pull your offer of admission, but we're keeping an eye on you. And that's not a really great way to start your relationship with your new university. So finishing strong, I think, makes a ton of sense. It's not that hard to do. Just keep your focus on the academics, and make sure that you're following through on the expectations set out by your teachers.
Yeah.
Teachers are, that's actually, you wrote this in some of the pre-notes here. A little bit of thoughtfulness around the people who maybe have supported you in the process. Say a little bit more about what you would recommend students thinking about there.
Yeah, I have a lot of teacher friends in high school, and or a lot of my friends are teachers in high school. And I asked them a few years back, some tips like what they would like to see from kids who were asking for a letter of recommendation, just to hear it directly from them. And one of the things they universally said back was, I know you didn't ask this, Karen, but one of the things that drives us crazy is that we never hear back after we have written the letter of recommendation in any way, right? So whether that's a thank you for writing the letter of recommendation, which should, by the way, is a non-negotiable. You need to say thank you to your teacher, write them a note, bring them a gift. step in after whatever. I don't care how it's given, but that needs a thank you. That's, they're not getting paid to write your letters of recommendation. And they are genuinely curious. They want to know, like, do you know where you're going? Have you got acceptances or denies or wait, like they're there to support you. They want to know these things. So parents listening, make sure your students have done that. Even the most thoughtful kids, sometimes this just doesn't occur to them because they're teenagers. And so reminding them, have you responded to your teacher? Have you said thank you? A Starbucks gift card goes a long way for most of the teachers I know. So, and again, just a thanks is huge.
Yeah, be a kind person.
Correct.
It's great, and I think it helps the whole school community. I think it's a good thing for the students that'll follow you, and it's good practice to have,
Yep.
certainly.
Agreed.
Um, I want to talk a little bit about students as they're looking ahead with excitement about schools that they're going to be attending. But before that, I have to ask this question because we get a lot from families, especially the parents that are really high stressed. What else can we send in? What can we do? Can we update them on the fact that Billy won his tennis tournament last week? Can we send in an update on where she's qualifying for DECA? Those kinds of things come to us often, I think, by people who are like, we gotta leave no stone unturned. What are your words of advice for folks who are looking for ways to continue to influence the process directly in February of the senior year?
Please resist the urge at all costs. Unless, I mean, if your kid like cured COVID in his free time with his research, great. By all means, maybe send that in.
That's meaningful, yeah.
But 98% of the time, I don't need to know this in the admissions office, right? That no admissions officer. And I get it. You want to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. But this is really not the time. But I say this all the time to parents and students. We ask for what we can get through. It's not just, listen, would I love to know that? Sure. In February, do I have time to care? Nothing personal that your kid won their tennis match or is going at DECA in X, Y, or Z. And I was a tennis player and my kid is in DECA. So to be clear, nothing personal against those. No, I don't need to know that. This is not going to be the thing that moves the needle on your application. So again, I always remind people applications spend very little time in an admissions officer's hands, way less than parents and students think they do. And so when I see something I didn't ask for, I'm not usually thrilled about it, right? It's usually what's standing between me and my pillow. So I always think, like, if it's 1 a.m., I always tell parents and students, it's 1 a.m. The last thing I have to read is this one last application before I can go to bed. Is this extra thing you sent in really going to make me happy that I'm 2 minutes later hitting my pillow or not? And if the answer is like, then don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do
Don't
it.
do it. Think of admission officers as like the cardinals entering the conclave, picking the pope. Just they're don't you can't communicate with them. They're going
Right,
to figure out
right.
their decisions and come out. And hopefully you'll be happy with that decision. So for students, I think that a lot kind of miss some of the administrative side of this, where there is a portal, an applicant portal that becomes a student portal when a student gets in, where they can go and actually receive their admissions decision. We have a lot of students where they're like, I haven't heard from that school. And it's like, well, have you logged into your portal to see what is
Have
there?
you
And
checked your email?
so you just had a student that went through this.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that looks like from the student side.
Yeah, if there's probably one very simple task I could not emphasize enough to students and parents to tell their students is to check their email religiously and to check their portal. Different schools communicate differently, and some communicate way more than others. What I will tell you is that once your student is admitted, or actually once the process is kind of seemingly in a different status, whether that's waitlist or denied, the vast majority, if not all email or portal, is going to be sent to your student. Do not expect to get a congratulations email yourself. Like, by the way, your student was admitted. They don't care about you anymore until they have the bill. I'm telling you this right now. So if you have a student, which is my next one coming up, who won't be listening to this pod, so I can throw him under the bus, is not going to check his email ever or portal, I will need to be on him all the time. My eldest, the one in college, was good about doing that kind of thing. But you need to have your students start checking their emails, checking their portal, all sorts of information. Some of it is vital. Registering for your dorm. If I guarantee my son would be living in the Holiday Inn next year, when he goes, because he's not going to check it if I don't remind him to. Because my daughter already knew what she is. She's given it time to do all this stuff, final transcripts, AP scores. There's gonna be a lot of post stuff that your student needs to do once they're admitted. This is not like, oh, good, we're done. There's a lot of other paperwork, so to speak, needs to get done. And while I promise you they will find you for the bill, the rest of it they might just send directly to your student. Literally
Yeah.
all of it. I can speak for my own daughter. I like didn't exist outside the bill once she was admitted. I think I
which
got
is
four
which is
emails.
great. I mean, it's an opportunity for students to become independent
Yes.
and start to take responsibility for their work. But I watched Karen, my 11-year-old, open up his email, click check all for all his emails, and just press delete. He didn't even look at what was in there. I was like, "What are you doing, man? There's an email from me in there.
Yep. Yep.
I sent you an article to read." So, yeah, we're gonna have, I think, a similar problem in terms of talking about good email hygiene when the
I
time
won't
comes around.
talk about what gender those people are, but okay, I'm just throwing that out there just to guess, just a guess.
There are patterns that we can see, certainly, as we look at these things. That's for sure. All right, one other piece. We're going to talk a little bit about financial aid in the next segment, as we always do. But I think that this is one space where a parent really needs to be on top of their student to think about what kind of offers are coming in. Um, Talk a little bit about kind of the role of the financial aid package and what are some things that families might need to do as they're looking ahead to starting college in the fall.
Yeah, I think these, as we would say, I hear myself say all the time, have these conversations earlier than you think you should be having them. Is there going to be any requirement for your student to have a job while they're in college? Are they going to have to pay? Are they paying any of the bill? Is any of their graduation money going towards their tuition bill? Do they need to work this summer? Do they like what is about the bill? Also, like, how is it getting paid? Right? It's going to be on your student's account. Now, again, this is usually the place that where a parent actually does get an email because they'd like to get paid. But even like checking out, are there payment plans? And I don't want to step on the finance team's feet because
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
brilliant and they're going to talk about all of those things probably. But like, I know that some schools allow like a monthly payment plan, so you're not shelling out so much money. Others, like where my daughter goes, you can pay on a semester basis. There is no monthly payment. So you have to pay each semester, or you can pay, I'm sure, all at once. I'm sure they would love that.
Yeah.
You also, if you have a 529, like how much of that are you using? Like my full disclosure, my husband and I have 529s for all of our kids, but not enough to cover all 4 years for all of them. So, like looking at interest rates, like does it make sense to use all of my daughters at once or take the loan first and then use the 529? So those are kind of conversations you want to be looking at. A lot of that's about, what's the market at, what's the interest rate at, what's your interest rate likely to be. But you don't want to be doing that in August when the bill's due in 2 days. You want to be doing that now and looking at how much money do we have? What are our payment options? What does this look like on our daily basis? Do we need to rob from this kid's 529 to pay this kid's, tuition bill? Again, I'll let the finance team take that one on.
Yeah.
But those are all questions you want to be thinking about now and not being putting off till later.
Well, ideally, thinking about even before this, but I think that the difference in your senior year is that you finally have the numbers, right? You know what this school's offer is going to be.
Yeah.
You had a couple of nice observations that I think can only come from a mom who's gone through this process about senior year and its meaning for students and the kinds of things that are memorable for them. Because we as professionals, we're always like, check your portal and make sure you've got your financial aid offer squared away. Um, but there are more fun things to be doing as a senior, which I think is in part why those other things don't get done. How do you talk to parents about, thinking about this transition from life in their childhood home to a new experience in college?
Yeah, so I think there's two different things I've been thinking about. And again, I have all teenage children, so not only are we going through this, but all of my friends are going through this as well. And I think the first thing I want parents and students to be thinking about, students especially, but parents too, is, what do you want the next 3 or 4 months to look like? Right? Is there something, there's going to be a lot, I have a friend, Ashley, who has hosted a Super Bowl party every year for the last, I don't know, 6 years, let's say. And her twin senior boys are graduating this year. And she said, this is the first of the lasts. That you'll hear that phrase a lot with seniors, right? This is the first, last Super Bowl party. This is the last time we're going to do this when they're here. and there's a lot of those. There's last concerts, last lacrosse games, last, fill in the blank for whatever it is that you kind of, your spring is going to look like with this student. So really just kind of thinking about making sure it's going to fly by too. Anybody who's got high schoolers will tell you that high school, you blink and they're done. And that last semester is definitely true. It's also a little manic. It's a little crazy. There's a lot going on. It's hard to sometimes keep your head about you because you're planning graduation parties and this other 14 other graduation parties. And so just kind of being thoughtful about when you actually have this breathing room, perhaps in February, what do you want the next 3, 4 months to look like? What do you need to make sure are priorities that your family's around for? Does like my daughter had her last lacrosse game. It was senior night. And so making sure my mother could be there. My son was actually playing baseball in the field behind her, so he couldn't be there. But like we had to have that kind of discussion. Where is everyone going to be? So just being really thoughtful about that. So that's kind of one aspect I want students to be thoughtful of in kind of the craziness that's going on.
And then, of course, there is the departure from what students know into something new. Any recommendations for students as they're starting to get to know their new communities, their new schools, they're establishing themselves in a new way, in a new place? How would you advise they think about that?
I would, get on their website. Again, I know some kids know where they're going at this point, some kids do not, but thinking about a roommate. My daughter got really lucky. She loves her roommates, or her roommate, I should say. But there's a lot of thinking about what do I need to do to live with another person in peace and harmony, and being really honest about who you are as a person. Your roommate can be a really big influence, and so really thinking about how are you going to find a roommate, what are you going to say about helping to do that. I think thinking about what you might want to be involved in on campus. Again, the websites for schools websites are great. There's all different kinds of connections. Parents, I will warn you, sometimes the parent websites of colleges are an interesting place to be a voyeur for a while. There's a lot that goes on there, some of which is super useful, and some of which is like, wow, I feel really better about myself as a parent reading that. So anyway, so that can still be useful information. But again, parents and students, there's just in the day, sometimes wonder, like, how did we ever find out anything before the internet? Like, how did we know
Yeah,
how
right.
we were going to
Right.
go to college? I have no idea. But now there's so many resources, getting excited, getting the swag, finding out, learning about the dorms that you have available to you, figuring out, looking at the course curriculum, things like that. There's just so much you can do ahead of time so you don't feel like it's all hitting you at once.
And as much as you prepare, it will all hit you at once
It
that,
will.
your student is gone and the student is starting a new adventure. And I think, if you do it right, then that goes really well. And you're alone. You don't have them
You
anymore.
do have
I
more
don't know. There's
bandwidth. Let
the,
me
how do you
let
put a
me
positive
end
spin on
on a
that?
good positive spin. You do have more bandwidth. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, how are you doing, Karen?" And I was like, "Listen, I miss my daughter, but one less person in your house is one less person in your house, and
Yeah.
there's one less meal to coordinate, or where's the car, or who has to be where." So try to embrace that. There is a positive there, and I will
It's a
say
new
I really
stage.
try to
Yeah.
embrace
Yeah.
that. So
Awesome. Thanks, Karen, for coming and sharing those tips.
always
Really
happy to be
appreciate it.
here.